Welcome, deep divers. For millennia, ancient Egypt seemed like this bedrock of unshakable traditions, deeply rooted in its gods.
Absolutely, a civilization built on continuity.
But then just imagine one pharaoh, just one, dares to shatter all that, turns millennia of belief upside down. Was he a revolutionary? A visionary, or maybe a heretic?
Yeah, that's the question, isn't it? Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into Akhenaten, that really enigmatic 18th dynasty pharaoh, the one who sparked Egypt's Sun Revolution.
Right.
We've got a pile of sources here, articles, research notes, and we're going to explore his life, his radical beliefs, Atenism, the unique city he built, Amun-Ra, and his very controversial legacy.
So our mission really is to figure out how one person could challenge thousands of years of tradition. Why did he do it? What was the impact, inside Egypt and outside? And why are we still talking about him, debating him today?
Exactly.
Get ready for some surprises, maybe some aha moments. So where do we kick things off?
Well, to really get Akhenaten, you have to understand the Egypt he was born into. Before him, the 18th dynasty, it was at its absolute peak. Power, wealth. Think pharaohs like Thutmose III, or even his own father, Amenhotep III.
A golden age.
Definitely. And traditional polytheism, especially the huge cult of Amun-Ra based in Thebes, was just dominant, utterly dominant. It was a very established, very conservative religious world.
And into that world steps Amenhotep, younger son of Amenhotep III and the powerful Queen Tai. He wasn't even the original heir, was he?
No, not at all. His older brother Thutmose was the crown prince. But Thutmose died young, around their father's 30th year on the throne. Suddenly, Amenhotep is next in line.
Wow. That's a massive shift in destiny right there. Do we have any sense of how maybe not being groomed for kingship from day one might have, shaped him or influenced his later radical moves?
That's a really key question. We actually know very little about his youth itself. There are tiny hints, like a wine docket from his father's palace in Malkata mentioning him.
The scraps.
Pretty much. But the fact he wasn't the original heir is significant. It means he probably didn't get that long traditional training for kingship. Some historians speculate this might have maybe freed him a bit. Less tied to the expectations of the Amun priesthood, perhaps gave him a sense of, destiny, a chance to pursue his own vision once he got power.
Interesting. Less constrained by the weight of tradition. I also saw this theory about him possibly being a high priest of Ptah in Memphis. Ptah, the god of craftsmen.
Ah, yeah, Cyril Alder's idea.
That seems like it could connect to his later artistic revolution, right? Does that hold much water?
It's a really compelling thought.
Yeah.
Aldred pointed out the high priest's title, the greatest of the directors of craftsmanship. It certainly offers a potential link to Akhenaten's very unusual artistic leanings later on. It's still debated, definitely not proven, lacking solid evidence. But it makes you think about what early influences might have nudged him towards being such an iconoclast.
Which brings us neatly to another big historical puzzle. The co-regency debate. Did he rule alongside his father, Amenhotep III, for a long time, like 12 years? Or not at all? Seems like Egyptologists really go back and forth on this.
Oh, absolutely. It's been a major point of contention. Some argue strongly against a long co-regency, maybe 2 years max. Others say none at all.
Right.
There was that discovery in 2014, inscriptions in Vizier Amenhotep II's tomb showing both names. That briefly fueled the idea of maybe an 8-year co-reign.
I remember that.
But it's been questioned. Many now think it just means the tomb's construction happened during both reigns. So yeah, the mystery continues, which happens a lot with ancient history, doesn't it? As far as evidence.
So what's really striking then is that when Amenhotep IV does take the throne around 1353 or 1351 BC, his early reign seems surprisingly traditional. He doesn't immediately toss out all the other gods. Why the slow buildup?
Exactly. It's not this sudden explosion of revolution you might expect. Early inscriptions show him worshiping lots of deities, Atum, Osiris, Anubis, Hathor.
The usual suspects.
Pretty much. The high priest of Amun was still active in his 4th year. His first royal titles even honored Thebes, calling it Southern Heliopolis, linking it to the sun god Ra. He even continued his dad's building work at Karnak in the Amun-Ra precinct. Decorated walls showing him worshiping Ra-Harakti in the old style, falcon head and all.
And the art.
Still conventional in those first few years. You see it in tombs like Kharuf's or Ramoses. So it suggests he was either playing the long game or maybe the really radical ideas took time to fully form.
Okay, so outwardly, he's playing by the rules, but underneath, something's definitely happening. What were the first, maybe subtle signs of this revolution brewing, even before the big name change?
Well, a key shift was already starting. He began building new places specifically for the Aten. At Karnak, the heart of Amun's power, he commissioned this huge, unique temple complex, open air, called the Perheten, the House of the Aten.
Open air, that's different.
Very different. Traditional temples were dark, mysterious, enclosed. Keep the sacred hidden. An open-air temple, bathed in sunlight. That speaks volumes about his focus shifting to the sun disk, the 8.
And then there's that early Sed festival. He held one around year 2 or 3. Those were usually for pharaohs celebrating like 30 years on the throne. Doing one so early seems incredibly bold. What was that about?
Highly unusual. Definitely a statement. Historians have theories. Maybe it coincided with one of his father's festivals. Maybe it was purely to honor the Aten, or perhaps it was a symbolic way to gather strength for the massive changes he knew were coming.
A kind of spiritual preparation.
Could be. Whatever the reason, it's thought that during those festivities, he probably made offerings only to the Aten, ditching the usual crowd of gods, an early, very public signal of where his devotion lay.
Okay, so all this is building towards that pivotal moment, changing his name. And we actually know pretty precisely when this happened, don't we?
We do, remarkably so. The sources, boundary stele mainly, pin it down, sometime between year 5, day 19 of the 3rd month, and day 13 of the 4th month. He goes from Amenhotep V, Amun is satisfied.
Linked to the old god.
Right. To Akhenaten, which means something like effective for the Aten, or maybe Aten is satisfied. There's even that alternative pronunciation proposed, Akhenjati.
It's more than just a name change, though. It's a huge public declaration. His identity is now completely tied to this one god, the Aten, like rebranding the entire monarchy.
Absolutely. And we can actually trace how Atenism itself developed. Egyptologist Donald Redford outlined 3 stages, showing this evolution.
Okay.
In the earliest stage, you still see the sun disk, but it's often depicted resting on the falcon-headed Ra-Harakti.
So the Aten is unique, but maybe not totally exclusive yet. Still has ties to the old sun god.
Familiar, but changing. What's next?
The intermediate stage. Here, the Aten gets elevated, clearly above other gods, and crucially, its name starts appearing inside cartouches.
Those oval rings around royal names? Exactly. That was traditionally reserved for the pharaoh, a symbol of eternal rule. Putting the Aten's name in a cartouche, that's like saying the god itself is royalty, a divine king.
Wow. And the final stage.
That's where we get the iconic image. The Aten's is a sun disk, but with rays ending in little human hands, reaching down, offering life, specifically to Akhenaten and Nefertiti. It also gets this powerful new title, an epithet, the Great Living Disk, which is in Jubilee, Lord of Heaven and Earth, emphasizing its total creative power.
It's revealing, too, that even before the official name change, you see Aten's importance growing. Like in Pernefer's tomb, inscriptions mention payments for the Aten overflowed, suggests a shift in resources.
Definitely. And that manifesto speech he supposedly gave in year 2 was a real turning point. He reportedly claimed other gods were useless, their temples falling apart, unlike the eternal, self-creating Aten. A direct challenge.
So by year 5, he's not just challenging, he's taking action.
Radical action. He apparently disbanded the priesthoods of all the other gods, and crucially, diverted their massive income straight to the Aten.
That's hitting them where it hurts the treasury.
Exactly. And the Aten itself starts getting depicted with royal symbols like those cartouches, and even the uraeus, that cobra on the pharaoh's crown. Divine authority. The god is literally being styled as a king.
And Akhenaten's role.
He declared himself the only intermediary, the sole connection between the Aten and humanity. All prayers, all devotion had to go through him.
That is an incredible concentration of power, religious and political. By year 9, it's official. Aten's is the only god you can worship. This feels forceful.
It certainly seems so. It led to systematically defacing Amun's name and image in temples across Egypt. Even the word gods, in plural, was often chiseled out of inscriptions.
Wow.
The Aten becomes this universal deity, source of all life. Its images symbolizing its unseen spirit. They even revised its name to strip away any links to older sun gods like Ra-Harakti, just pure Aten. It was an unprecedented top-down revolution.
And the core of this belief system, we find it in the great hymn to the Aten, right? Possibly written by Akhenaten himself.
Many believe so. It's this beautiful, powerful piece of poetry. It hammers home the idea of Aten as the sole creator. Everything depends on it. It says, "O sole God beside whom there is none. You made the earth as you wished, you alone."
Powerful stuff.
And critically, it cements Akhenaten's unique place. You are in my heart, and there is none who knows you except your son. He's claiming this exclusive divine connection. Only he truly gets the Aten.
It really raises the question, though, how much was this forced on people? Did everyone just instantly convert?
That's the tricky part. Akhenaten clearly redirected state religion, defaced temples, cut off funding. But the archaeology at Amarna, his new city, paints a more complex picture.
How so?
Well, courtiers living there still had names linked to the old gods. People were found buried with amulets of traditional figures like Bes, the Gorf god, or Tauret, the hippo goddess, or the Eye of Horus. Even some royal jewelry pieces had references to Mut, Amun's consort.
So people didn't just ditch everything overnight, at least not privately. But I've also read reports that ordinary folks were apparently scared. Scared enough to scratch out Amun's name on their own stuff, like little scarab beetles or makeup jars, fearful of being accused of sticking to the old ways. That suggests pressure.
It does imply a degree of coercion, yes, or at least a strong incentive to conform publicly. While some old beliefs might have lingered privately, the state machine was pushing hard for Atenism, and you didn't want to be seen defying the king. The consequences could be severe. So public conformity makes sense.
So, to really cement this revolution and escape the influence of the powerful Amun priesthood back in Thebes, Akhenaten makes this massive move. He packs up and founds an entirely new capital city, Akhenaten, Horizon of the Aten, modern Amarna. What was special about that spot? Why there?
He specifically chose virgin territory, a place halfway between the old capital Thebes and the northern center of Memphis. Crucially, it was on the east bank of the Nile.
Facing the sunrise?
Exactly. And the boundary markers, the stelae he set up, they explicitly state why he chose it. It was not the property of a god, nor being the property of a goddess, nor being the property of any people able to lay claim to it. It was a blank slate, no existing religious baggage, pure ground for the Aten.
Untainted.
Precisely. And the name, Akhenaten, Horizon of the Aten, was perfect. There's this natural dip in the cliffs on the eastern horizon there that looks just like the hieroglyph for Akhet, horizon, the place where the sun rises. It was symbolically perfect for his sun god city.
And they built it incredibly fast, right? How did they manage that? A whole city from scratch?
They used a new building technique, smaller standardized limestone blocks called talatats. They were roughly half a cubit square by 1 cubit long, much smaller than traditional blocks.
Like ancient Lego?
Sort of. Their uniform size meant they could be mass-produced easily, transported quickly, and assembled much faster by less skilled labor. He was efficient. By Akhenaten's 8th year on the throne, Akhenaten was up and running, ready for the royal court.
Wow. What were the main parts of the city?
You had the central city with huge temples to the Aten Temple, the small Aten Temple, royal palaces, government offices, a records office where the Amarna letters were found.
Right.
And it's interesting. While building stopped in Thebes, they did keep working on Aten temples in other big cities like Heliopolis and Memphis. So he wasn't totally abandoning the rest of Egypt, just shifting the main focus, the power base.
But maybe the most visually dramatic change is the Amarna art style. It's just so different. It leaps out at you compared to traditional Egyptian art.
It really does. It's known for being more realistic, sometimes called expressionistic, definitely more naturalistic. There's more sense of movement, action. It feels less stiff, less formal than the highly stylized, almost static art that was the norm for centuries.
And Akhenaten's own portraits. They are something else entirely. Not the usual idealized muscular pharaoh. He's shown with, well, features some call unconventional or even unflattering. Sagging belly, wide hips, skinny legs, but thick thighs, sort of feminine-looking breasts, this long face, thick lips. It's such a departure from the norm, from idealized power to something almost personal, maybe even vulnerable. What was he trying to say with that image, beyond just reflecting the Aten's supposed androgyny? How did this visual shock therapy connect to his religious message?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And you're right, it wasn't just about art for art's sake. It was deeply theological. By showing himself embodying both male and female aspects, the fertile belly, the wide hips, he was visually claiming to be the sole earthly vessel for the Aten course, the complete, self-sufficient creator God who was both mother and father.
So the body becomes the message.
Exactly. It smashed every previous visual rule of kingship. He was deliberately setting himself apart, saying, look, I'm not just another pharaoh. I am the unique connection to the divine. My very form reflects the Aten singularity. This wasn't just portraiture. It was spiritual propaganda designed to break the old molds and elevate him as the new single pathway to God.
It really makes you rethink what royal image meant. He's almost saying, forget tradition. Look at me as I represent my God. You can almost feel the confusion, maybe even shock, ripple through the court when these images first appeared.
Absolutely. Imagine being a sculptor or painter, trained for generations in these rigid artistic canons, and suddenly the boss says, Right, carve me with a pot belly and wide hips. It wasn't just changing styles, it was changing ideology, demanding a whole new way to see divinity in the king.
And did this new intimate style extend to the rest of the royal family? Nefertiti, the daughter.
Yes, and that's also revolutionary.
Right.
It's really the only time in Egyptian royal art we see the family in such intimate, almost casual poses, holding hands, kissing, showing real affection. It feels very human.
Unprecedented.
Totally. And Nefertiti herself, her status seems elevated too. She appears alongside Akhenaten, yes, but also alone, sometimes doing things only pharaohs traditionally did,
Yeah.
like the smiting the enemy pose. It really suggests she held unusual power and status for a queen, almost like a co-ruler in some ways.
So while Akhenaten is deep in his religious revolution, building his city, creating this new art, what's happening with the empire Egypt controls? We have the Amarna letters, right? Those 382 diplomatic tablets found at Akhenaten. What do they tell us about Egypt's place in the world then?
They paint a picture of a changing world. Egypt had this huge empire built up by earlier pharaohs like Thutmose III. But now, new powers were rising, especially the Hittites up in Anatolia. And Egypt's main ally in the region, the Mitanni Kingdom, was weakening. It was a tricky geopolitical situation.
And there's this long-running debate about Akhenaten's foreign policy, isn't there? The traditional view is that he was basically a pacifist, so absorbed in Atenism that he neglected the empire, letting it fall apart.
Right.
You always hear about Ribhata, the ruler of Byblos, sending something like 60 desperate letters begging for help against this guy Zero of Amuru and getting no response. Ribhata eventually gets killed. Sounds pretty neglectful. What's the current take?
That Ribhata story is the classic example used for the pacifist view, and it's powerful. But modern scholarship tends to be more nuanced now. The counterarguments, which are probably more widely accepted today, suggest he wasn't a complete pacifist.
Okay.
There's evidence he did send instructions, he did send military aid, Egyptian troops, Nubian soldiers, chariots, ships to troubled spots. He seems to have largely kept control over the core parts of Egypt's empire in the Near East, and importantly, he avoided a major, costly war with the rising Hittites. The main loss was Amuru, when Aziru basically switched sides to the Hittites. So maybe not aggressively expansionist like his predecessors, but not entirely hands-off either.
More like managing decline or maybe just avoiding costly foreign adventures while focusing internally. The only definite military campaign we know of was putting down a rebellion in Nubia, right? Led by the viceroy Thutmose.
That's the only one clearly documented, commemorated on a couple of stelae, yes. There's some speculation, based on hints in later texts like Tutankhamun's restoration stela, about maybe unsuccessful campaigns in Syria or the Levant, near Gezer or Kadesh. But it's debated. His main energy was clearly directed inwards, towards the religious reforms.
Now, the last 5 years or so of his 17-year reign, the historical record gets really thin, doesn't it? It's harder to piece together what was happening. Why is that?
It makes things incredibly difficult. Just fewer inscriptions, less clear evidence. However, there was a really important inscription found relatively recently in 2012 at a quarry site called Deir el-Bersha. It's dated to year 16 and confirms Akhenaten and Nefertiti were still ruling together as king and queen shortly before his death.
Ah, so that cleared up some theories about Nefertiti maybe disappearing or falling from favor earlier.
Exactly. It showed they were still the royal couple late in the reign.
And people often point to Regnal year 12 as maybe the high point, the zenith. There was that huge royal reception depicted at Amarna. Tributes flooding in from all over Nubia, Punt, Syria. Even the Hittites apparently sent gifts. The whole family's there. Akhenaten, Nefertiti, all 6 daughters. Sounds like a final moment of glory.
It certainly looks like a grand display of international diplomacy and royal power. But looking back, there's also this significant theory gaining traction about an epidemic, possibly plague.
Plague around that time.
Yeah. Some suggest it might have arrived with those foreign delegations at the year 12 reception, or maybe it originated in Egypt. This epidemic could explain why several of Akhenaten's daughters, Akhenaten, Nefer, Seti-Pernra, seemed to die in the later years of his reign. It would certainly help explain why the historical record gets patchier if the court was dealing with a major health crisis like that.
That makes sense. And his death, after 17 years on the throne, leads to more questions about succession, doesn't it? The idea of co-regencies maybe with Smenkhar, who might have been a son or brother married to his eldest daughter Meritating, or even Nefertiti ruling alongside him. There's that co-regency stela, but it's damaged.
Very debated. The stela is recarved, making it hard to be certain who it originally showed as co-regent. But the theory behind these potential co-regencies is strong.
What's the thinking?
That amidst the possible epidemic, the deaths in the family, maybe growing unrest about the reforms. Akhenaten tried to shore things up, arrange these co-regencies to ensure the Amun-Ra family line continued, to provide stability before he died. An attempt to secure his legacy, perhaps?
Makes sense. So Akhenaten dies. He is initially buried in the royal tomb planned for him out in the desert east of Akhetaten, in the royal wadi. But the tomb wasn't finished.
No, mostly unfinished except for his burial chamber. His sarcophagus was smashed up later, but parts were recovered and has been reconstructed. You can see it in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo now.
But his actual body, his mummy, that's a whole different can of worms.
It really is. The consensus is that his mummy was moved from Amarna probably quite soon after Tutankhamun abandoned the city. It seemed to have ended up in tomb KV-55 in the Valley of the Kings, back near Thebes.
KV-55, that's the controversial one.
Extremely controversial. Genetic tests back in 2010 identified the mummy in KV-55 as Tutankhamun's father, which points strongly to Akhenaten.
Oh.
But the identification is still debated by some Egyptologists. Could it possibly be Smenkhare instead?
Yeah.
The age estimates, the context, it's not 100% settled. Another Amarna mystery.
And after Akhenaten dies, Akhenism just collapses pretty quickly, doesn't it?
Remarkably fast. His own son, Tutankhaten, living image of Aten, changes his name in just his second year on the throne to Tutankhamun, living image of Amun.
A very clear signal.
Absolutely. He packs up, leaves Akhenaten, moves the court back to Memphis and Thebes. He issues the restoration stela, famously declaring he's restoring the temples of the old gods, bringing Egypt back from chaos, restoring its customs to those of the time of Re. He even started dismantling Akhenaten's Aken temples and reusing those Talatat blocks for his own building projects.
Wow, reusing the materials from his father's temples. That's symbolic.
It's a decisive rejection. And later pharaohs went even further. Horemheb, who wasn't related and became the last king of the 18th dynasty, and then the Ramesside pharaohs like Seti I and Ramesses II, they systematically destroyed Akhenaten's monuments, pulled down the Aten temples, reused the blocks everywhere. Seti I even had Amun's name carved back onto inscriptions where Akhenaten had erased it.
Why such a thorough demolition job? It seems like more than just wanting the old gods back. It feels personal, like they wanted to wipe him from memory.
That's exactly what it was. Damnatio memoriae, the erasure of memory. Akhenaten, Smenkhare, Tutankhamun, even I, who followed Tut, they were all scrubbed from the official king lists. It was made to look like Amenhotep III was immediately followed by Horemheb.
As if that whole period just never happened.
Precisely. In official records, Akhenaten was sometimes just referred to as the enemy, or that criminal, from Akhetaten. They wanted to completely undo his reign, erase the disruption, pretend Egypt's traditions had never been so fundamentally challenged.
It's incredible given how revolutionary his reign was. But even though polytheism came back, did Akhenaten's experiment leave any lasting religious mark? Did it change how Egyptians saw the pharaoh's connection to the gods?
It seems it did, actually. Even with the return of Amun and the others, something had shifted. Before Amarna, the pharaoh was seen as the god Horus on earth, the essential link. After Akhenaten declared himself the sole intermediary and then that failed, Egyptians seemed to develop a more direct sense of connection to the gods.
Bypassing the king.
In a way, yes. A sense that the gods could intervene directly in people's lives. Amun became even more powerful, seen as the king among all gods. This arguably led to a gradual decrease in the pharaoh's absolute divine status over time, and a corresponding increase in the power of the Amun priesthood. The trust in the pharaoh as the only conduit was kind of broken.
That's a subtle but profound shift. What about language? Did his revolution impact how people wrote or spoke?
Surprisingly, yes. One lasting effect was linguistic. Akhenaten's reign seems to have accelerated the use of late Egyptian, the spoken language of the time, in official written documents. It helped bridge the gap between formal hieroglyphic writing and everyday speech.
And that stuck.
It seems so. Even after his memory was erased, this trend towards using more contemporary language in writing continued. So some changes, once made, couldn't be entirely rolled back.
So he's literally wiped from the records, lost to history for centuries, until archaeologists rediscover Amarna in the late 19th century, and suddenly, boom, he's back, and he becomes this huge figure in modern culture.
Absolutely, he pops up everywhere. Novels like Thomas Mann's Joseph and his brothers, Miko Waltari's The Egyptian, which got made into that Hollywood movie where he's almost like a proto-Christian figure.
Yeah, I remember that. It's like modern society finds his story irresistible. This idea of breaking the mold, this singular radical vision.
Totally. Philip Glass wrote a whole avant-garde opera, Akhenaten. He's in comic books Marvel. The end-of-level games like Assassin's Creed Origins, even death metal bands like Nile write songs about him.
Ah, seriously.
Yeah, Cast Down the Heretic. And his strange, androgynous depictions in art have really fueled modern interpretations too. He remains this potent symbol of radical change.
And just as a final fascinating note, he's actually recognized as a prophet in the Druze faith.
That's right, which ties into that other enduring idea, Akhenaten as a pioneer of monotheism, maybe even influencing the later Abrahamic religions. Sigmund Freud famously argued in Moses and Monotheism that Moses was actually an Atenist priest who fled Egypt.
It is tempting to see parallels, isn't it? Especially when you read the great hymn to the Aten alongside something like Psalm 104 in the Bible. The language can be strikingly similar.
It is tempting, but most scholars today are cautious about drawing a direct line. The broad consensus is that biblical monotheism developed independently centuries later. While the similarities are interesting, viewing Akhenaten primarily through that lens can distort the historical reality. He wasn't really preaching a universal, ethical monotheism in the way we understand it now. It was more about elevating one god, the Aten, with himself as the sole conduit, likely as a way to consolidate immense political and religious power. Not quite the humane teacher or Christ-like figure some popular accounts make him out to be.
Right. So we've journeyed through this incredible story. Akhenaten, the revolutionary, the visionary, the art patron, maybe the heretic. A leader whose radical experiment ultimately failed, leading to his own erasure from history. Such contradictions.
His story really is a powerful case study, isn't it? How belief systems can reshape a whole society, for good or ill, and how quickly even the most profound changes can be reversed, at least on the surface.
It makes you think, what does Akhenaten's story tell us about that fine line between radical vision and perhaps dangerous instability? And how does the power of belief, whether it's religious, political, personal shape, not just one king's reign, but the whole path of a civilization?
That's the question to ponder.
We hope this deep dive has given you plenty to think about. Reflect on how these huge shifts, even when they're undone, can leave these lasting marks on culture, on society, shaping how we understand the past and maybe even the present. Keep exploring, deep divers.